Hi, hope you're doing really good, and welcome to Ask Daniel number 15, in which we are going to talk about a number of emails. I think there are actually 5 emails and 3 comments that I want to spend some time on. I hope it'll bring a lot of value to everyone that's tuning in here. And before we begin, as always, nothing is specific or medical advice to anyone, just general thoughts and comments that I hope will be helpful to anyone that's tuning in. And with that said, actually, let's start with this comment from a couple of days ago. I think we can make a really good good point here that will help us as we move along and talk about other questions. So where was it? I was so ready to talk about a specific comment here. There it is. There it is. So this is a comment on Insomnia Insight number 23. Not so many comments on that one. It's Insomnia Insight number 23, using coffee to treat insomnia, where I talk about how actually coffee is not the culprit when it comes to chronic insomnia. And having that coffee in the morning to make you feel refreshed can actually really help when you're trying to spend less time in bed and do the other CBTi techniques that I always talk about. Now here's the question from Lydel. Hi sir, I have a question. They say that caffeine can only give temporary insomnia, but why has my insomnia lasted 6 months? I blame caffeine for my insomnia. This is a kind of short, very to the point type of question that we can learn a lot from. So Lydel, blames coffee for his trouble sleeping that has been lasting for 6 months. And how can that be the case? Well, in my mind, this is a classic second arrow type thing. So there are 1.5 million reasons for someone to have trouble sleeping, including coffee. But there's only one thing that can produce chronic insomnia. And here's where this, one of my favorite analogies, the 2-arrow analogy, comes into play. So briefly, the first arrow is something, an insult, something that harms us that we cannot control. My go-to analogy has been you have a coffee and you burn yourself on the coffee, and then you want to curse the barista that served you that really hot coffee. Now you've been hit by 2 arrows. The first one, you burnt your lip. The second one, you react strongly to it. You kind of curse out the barista. It is always that second arrow that hurts you the most. Your reaction to the initial insult is the big problem. And so going back to coffee, and we're actually using coffee in this analogy too, is yes, if somebody is kind of sensitive to caffeine and doesn't typically drink that, and they have a double espresso at 7 p.m. and they can't sleep, yeah, the coffee is the culprit, no question about that. But when somebody's had trouble sleeping for 6 months, it's not the coffee, it's the reaction to kind of the initial sleeplessness that maybe was brought on by coffee. It's not really important what that initial thing that caused sleeplessness in the beginning was. It's the reaction to it that is the problem. It is the why can't I sleep? Is it the coffee? Why did the coffee make me not sleep? Maybe I shouldn't have coffee. Maybe I should have a little bit of coffee. Maybe the coffee was a particular brand that I have a problem. Maybe it's this. Kind of the worry, the preoccupation, the trying to figure it out. That is what causes chronic insomnia. So I think we're going to stop there, but I hope, Lydel, that was helpful to you. And we can apply this as we go along here to so many things, this kind of 2-arrow analogy. So that said, yep, let's move along here and look at a question that came in here from Ernest, and this was 3 days ago, and he's writing the following. Hi, I was hoping you could shed some light on the study I found on blue light. This study does seem legit in showing that blue light does affect your sleep. So I want to jump actually to the part where they describe how the study was done. And here it is. So in this study, there were 19 healthy subjects, so 19 people participated. They were 22 to 29 years old. They were the purpose of the study. In the first part, they were in actigraphy, kind of a Fitbit type the watch, Fitbit style type device that checks kind of movement and estimates when they get up and not. They also completed a sleep diary. And in the second part, they were in a sleep lab and they were exposed to computer screens from 9 to 11. the hours where you typically start making melatonin. They're exposed to 4 types of light: high intensity blue light, low intensity blue light, high intensity red light, and low intensity red light. Following exposure to light, they were connected to instruments that measure brain waves and can determine the stages of sleep, etc. And they say here, on average, exposure to blue light reduced the duration of sleep by 16 minutes. In addition, exposure to blue light significantly reduced the production of melatonin. And so that's kind of was the meat of the study. Here's the thing, you know, when you have a study of this size, you know, there are 19 subjects, there are 4 conditions, you know, anything can shake out from this type of study. And 16 minutes is very little. And so I think if you really want to find out if blue light or any type of like anything of impact, anything like that has any significant impact, you need like at least hundreds of people, you know. With 19, anything can shake out. And I will say, you know, straight up here that I don't pay any attention whatsoever to these findings. I think they're really meaningful, to be honest. And there was another, there was a study that my good friend Martin Reed, he kind of texted me. Was it Martin or Michael? One of my 2 good kind of insomnia buddies texted me like 2 weeks ago and was like, there was a study that showed that blue light was actually good for you. It actually helped you with sleep. It just shows that, you know, you can hear all types of things. So, so Ernest, thanks for you know, contributing with this kind of mini journal club here, and hope this answer was helpful to you. And with that said, let us move along to a number of questions here, which are of which the first one actually is just a little encouraging email here from Aurora. Aurora, yeah. No, I said I actually called the person emailed Pooja here. So I'm going to read a little bit from an email from September, and then kind of the most recent one. The one from September reads "Sporadic Fatal Insomnia" is the title, and it says, "I'm super worried. I know a lot of people think they have it. I know it's extremely rare. I've had insomnia since early May this year. Sometimes I only sleep 2 hours. I've tried multiple medications: Ambien, Trazodone, Benadryl, melatonin, Seroquel, mirtazapine, Depakote. I previously was super healthy. I had a baby, had frequent PVCs. I feel like insomnia started when I started a beta blocker. There's more to it." And she's the writer says, "I was so scared to go to a neurologist and get the bad news that I have sporadic fatal insomnia and more." Now, I just kind of that as a backdrop to an email that came 4 days ago, which just says the following: "Hey, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I'm doing much better. I stopped worrying about my fatal insomnia and I've been sleeping better. Thank you. I was so worried about this. Ha ha ha." So, you know, from Pooja here, I want to thank you so much for sharing that things are much better. That is amazing. And the classic thing that everybody says that is getting better: I stopped worrying. I stopped worrying. That is the thing you always hear. And, you know, when you hear me say that, you might go, well, how can I stop worrying? Well, yes, that is the tricky one, of course. You can't just decide to stop worrying. You know, you can't control your thoughts and emotions. But what you can control, as I always say, is kind of what you do during the day. You kind of, you know, make sure you get up early at the same time every day. Like, have fun, do things you enjoy, shift your, you know, just be active and shift your attention away from sleep. I think that's a really big one. And of course, you know, spending less time in bed, doing kind of the techniques that I always talk about. But, you know, super happy to hear that, Pooja, and thanks for sharing that. That's really, really, really cool. And now we are going to move on to an email from Christie. And Christie actually reached out 11 days ago, and I just started kind of spending less time in bed and applying kind of the CBTi techniques that I always talk about, and now has a follow-up question. So that came in 3 days ago. And Christie says, "Thanks so much for your response. It was super helpful and reassuring. You got it. Thank you for emailing me. My next question is, I'm still waking in the night, but now stimulus control doesn't seem to work. I will be up 3 to 4 times, head back to bed, won't be able to sleep, then go back to repeat. I eventually just get up and start the day very early. I'm much more tired than I've been. After a few days of this happening, I thought I'd shorten my sleep window by half an hour. I had a few good nights and then back to the same, so even less sleep than my previous week. I notice whenever I implement the new CBTi strategy, I have a couple of good nights and then I'm back to multiple long awakenings. Any suggestions? Thank you so much. Absolutely. I have some thoughts here. The first one, and I think the more important one is kind of my second thought here, but the first thought is this one. When people implement this, what's called stimulus control, which basically means that the goal of stimulus control is to kind of reassociate the bed with sleeping. So the rule of thumb is that you should only use your bed for sleep, and oftentimes what you often hear people say is that if you haven't fallen asleep in 15 minutes, then leave the bed and only go back if you're sleepy again, which often leads to this kind of back and forth type of situation like you, Christie, describe here. In bed, can't fall asleep, get out of bed, feeling sleepy, maybe go back in and out, which can be really anxiety provoking. So I think there are a couple of important things here. One is I don't think it's necessary to leave the bed. It is true that you want to avoid kind of like being frustrated and annoyed and angry in bed. I believe that's true, but you don't have to leave the bed. I think a lot of us, including myself, I go to bed maybe an hour and a half before I actually fall asleep. And I spend probably a good hour just watching a Netflix show in bed, which I look forward to the entire day. So I don't think that's a problem at all. And so going back to your example here, I think if you wake up and you feel like, you're awake, but you're pretty comfortable in bed, then you can just try to take that mental journey somewhere. Just like think about something pleasant. If that comes easy to you, stay in bed. You're probably about to fall asleep. If it doesn't, then you can pick up a book and read in bed, or you can watch a Netflix show in bed. I think my take is that I don't believe electronics are bad for you at all. Like light, as we talked about, I don't think it's a problem. Time, maybe. Like whenever you use electronics, typically you see what time it is. That can be really, you start calculating. With that caveat, I don't think it's a problem. Light, things like that are not a problem. You can even, as I said, kind of read in bed. If that kind of shifts your attention away from sleep, that's great. And now, the one thing to remember there is that a lot of people like try to pick a really boring, a dull book that's gonna, make them sleep. That's not a good idea, because then it becomes a sleep effort. Then you're actually trying to make yourself sleep, which never works. You have to try to shift attention, think about something different, and then sleep really can happen. You might, a lot of people are then scared that like, oh, I'm going to lose sleep if I start reading or something like that, that doesn't happen. Like, you lose sleep by trying to sleep more. The fear of losing sleep is what makes you lose sleep. So if you do something that you actually enjoy, that's much better. Now, so I think that was it about the kind of up and down part. And I've heard what's her name, Sasha Stevens, who's written a couple of really good books. She says that if you've been out of bed like twice, then like don't do it again. I think she's kind of a sleep genius, so I don't think that's bad advice at all. But I think more importantly is kind of the second part of this question, which is whenever I change something, I have a few good nights and then back to the same, which is kind of like classic when it comes to any intervention that kind of temporarily boosts your confidence. And you hear it all the time with people that experiment with supplements. Like I started taking this valerian tea, it worked for a few nights, then it stopped working. I took this other supplement, or medications too. I took the medication for a few nights, it worked great for a few nights, then it stopped working. And the reason it appears to stop working is that, the reason it works in the first place is kind of the belief in it. That's like, okay, I'm doing this new thing, I think it's going to work, and you kind of boosts your sleep confidence, takes away some anxiety, and then it appears to work. But then you still have this lingering doubt. Like after a few nights, you're like, is it going to work the third night? Is it going to work the fourth night? Maybe, maybe not. And then that kind of self-monitoring makes it appear like it stopped working. And by the way, when we talk about working, it's very important to know that nothing can make you sleep. So nothing can work in the sense that it makes you sleep. Spending less time in bed, of course, does work because it increases your sleep drive. So it allows your, builds up a sleep drive that makes your body really want to sleep. But I think the most important thing is this one, that whenever you change things and modify things, you that leads to self-monitoring. When you change your sleep window, for example, you are going to want to know if that works, or you're going to kind of be querying, questioning yourself, like, is it working, is it not working, which can really cause a lot of trouble sleeping and insomnia. So I think the most important thing is to set it and forget it. Like, pick a sleep window. Let's say it's from 11 p.m. till 6 in the morning. So, 7-hour window, something like that, or a 6-hour window, or 6.5 hour window, and just stick to it for at least 2 weeks. Don't question it. Set it and then forget it. Don't question it. Don't think about if you should do this. Don't think about if you should that. Just like do things during the day that you enjoy, and then you end up this kind of chasing your own tail situation, where you're tweaking things, and then kind of, or reaction to that, and then a reaction to that, and a reaction to that, etc., etc., etc. And again, I want to say, like, reading the second email from Christie, the kind of what I'm the overall picture I'm getting is the picture of somebody who has committed, who's doing the work, who has a lot of kind of yo-yoing in the beginning, which is very common. And but kind of the overall picture, Christy, is like, I think you're going to really, really well. I just feel it. I feel how you are going to have this like moment coming up where you're going to be like, oh, that time I fell asleep easy, and I fell back asleep easy, and that was like the fourth night, and I think this is working, and it starts building your sleep confidence, and then it's like, then you're home free. The thing is, like, with this first stage, I call yo-yo stage. I feel like the second stage is the foothold stage, where you start believing, and if you just get past that yo-yo stage and you start believing, then it's pretty much like no return. It's really good if you when you get there, I want to say. Christy, hang in there and stay in touch. And with that said, let us move to an email from Grace. And this is Grace that was a guest here on the podcast for Talking Insomnia number 17. And I think I'm going to just read a little bit from the beginning, and then we can go down to the actual question, which says, she says the following. Hi, Daniel. My health is doing a lot better. My doctor has prescribed me antibiotics, and my sleep has been slightly better along with decreasing my anxiety. Despite this, my doctor still agrees that my sleep problem are mainly just to hyperarousal, since now that the affection is gone, I still am having sleep misperception. And for those of you not familiar with that, it's kind of sleep misperception is when you sleep a lot more actually than when you know, or when you just like you really don't have a good idea of how much you sleep. I remember being told by you and other people that it was simply hyperarousal, and I apologize. I just felt that there had to be something physical causing it, since I have no history or family history of insomnia, and the sudden abruptness of it was odd to me. I want to interrupt there and say that for anyone else hearing this is so common, that someone with insomnia is like, there has to be something more than just anxiety. There has to be something more than hyperarousal. This cannot just this is so bizarre, so weird, so strong, so powerful, so abrupt. There has to be more than anxiety, but typically it is just hyperarousal. Hyperarousal can cause really strong symptoms. So I think that's a real learning point for everyone out there. Now, so we kind of covered that, and then she says, I've really been trying to put the CBTi techniques to use, like you suggested. I listened to your advice, and my sleep has improved drastically. That's really, really good. I no longer have sleep anxiety, and I've gotten rid of my ridiculous routines that I had set in place. I allow myself to drink coffee, enjoy caffeine during the day. I simply act as I did before having insomnia. I realize now that I am in fact sleeping, but the misperception is still there, usually appearing more severely depending on the night. My boyfriend and I will call sometimes at night before I go to bed. He has told me multiple times he would hear me snoring, that he would ask if I was still awake. I would not respond. Now, she says, the one thing I've difficulty with is the bedtime restriction. I've been trying to restrict my time in bed, going to bed like 11, and then we'll set an alarm for 6 or so, but I don't know if I'm properly restricting my bedtime because I often don't realize how long I am, if I'm sleeping from the sleep misperception. I have a Fitbit I'm thinking about using, but somebody told me it can falsely record sleep, question mark. Is this true? Simply if you're lying down, it can record sleep. Sorry for the long email. I have a few questions. How do I successfully implement bedtime restriction with severe sleep misperception? Since I feel like I cannot tell how much I'm getting, how often I follow all of the other techniques, but sometimes on a night where my misperception is very bad, I'll get worried and stay in bed much longer, and I fear I've gotten zero sleep. So, Grace and anybody out there with kind of similar situation here, I want to say, firstly, my sleep has improved drastically. That is amazing. That is really, really, that is like the headline. That is like the thing to focus on, to play up, to tell people, and because that really should boost your sleep confidence, that kind of gives you that tailwind to, like, keep going. So that's awesome. That's really the news here. That's the big thing. Now, a couple of things about questions here, like, can Fitbits falsely record sleep? I want to say that generally speaking, they're pretty accurate. And I think if somebody, it's true, if you're lying completely still, it doesn't know if you're sleeping or not. It's because I do believe that it really goes on motion. So that's true. But that said, if we are awake, even if we are lying still, we typically move a little bit. So I think generally speaking, they are pretty good at estimating how much you sleep. But the question in my mind is more like, should you use the Fitbit? And they, they're almost always, it's not a good idea, because the key to get sleeping well is not thinking about sleep. People that sleep good, they don't think about sleep at all. They just have no preoccupation, no thinking about it at all. So the goal is really to shift attention away from sleep. Using a Fitbit tends to make you pay more attention to your sleep. The one exception I feel is that if somebody has this misperception and really feels, if someone feels like, if I use my Fitbit and it tells me that I slept 5 hours, then I'm going to feel really good. Then I'm going to feel really good and confident that I'm sleeping. Well, then, then that could be a good idea to use it for that situation, which is kind of a little bit like your situation here. So that's something to think about. Now, more importantly, I think how successfully implement bedtime restriction with severe sleep misperception. I understand the question here, because if you've been in bed and it's like 6 a.m. and you feel like I literally have not slept at all this entire night, I gotta get some sleep. That could be a challenge. And I think I felt like I had one thing in mind that I was going to say, but it will come back to me. But I think it's not like bedtime restriction is not complicated. It is all about, like, committing to a certain wake up time. Even if for a person that, let's say, knows for a fact, they know for a fact that they've only slept 2 hours, they should still, according to this, this technique, they should still get up at, for example, 6 a.m. because then the next night they will be more sleepy and fall into deeper sleep. And then eventually, over time, things will kind of regularize and your sleep confidence will build up. So I think it applies the same for somebody that has misperception, that just doesn't know how much they sleep. The thing with insomnia is that it's really driven by the fear of losing sleep. When you're fearful, you're worried about losing sleep, you do things like kind of sleep in the morning, catch a nap when you can, to make sure you try to preserve sleep, which it can feel good that kind of day you do it, but over the long term, it doesn't allow you to build that kind of nice solid sleep drive, the need for sleep that you need to get that deep, refreshing sleep when you don't have sleep misperception, where you really feel you're sleeping well. So the key always is to kind of like go to bed not before 11, get up at 6, and don't question it, and just and just stick with it. That is the thing. And the sleep misperception really is caused by hyperarousal, and like so many other things. And I think the real key to getting that hyperarousal lower is to really feel that you're sleeping. when you have sleep misperception, and when you feel that you're sleeping, well, the sleep misperception kind of goes away for two reasons. One is that you really notice that you're sleeping, so you're not having sleep misperception, and then also your belief in your sleep increases, your confidence grows, and then you have less hyperarousal, and that helps it long term as well. So, Grace, I want to say, stay in touch. I think it sounds like you've done a lot of it's a lot of progress here, which is fantastic. And just if you just keep going, I bet that you'll see more and more and more and more progress. Good things happening to you. Cool. So with that said, we actually have two questions from a Tim, and the first one is from Tim J. Hello, Daniel. I've been having trouble sleeping for over a month now. I've reached to you before. This is the first time I'm emailing. It all started on Christmas. I became aware that I was falling asleep and experienced a high amount of anxiety. I cannot tell if I fall into a deep sleep, but I do have dreams. My fear has shifted to SFI, sporadic fatal insomnia. I'm 22 years old. This whole mess has made me go to the hospital twice. Also, I had to drop my spring semester. Since it has been a month, I want to think that I have been sleeping more than I perceive. Yesterday, I went for a walk with my father, and I felt fine. Is it possible this could all be caused by anxiety about this disease? Also, is it possible that I'm sleeping and not perceiving it? I feel like if I had not slept at all, I would be in a lot worse condition, or I would be dead. Please let me know. Having reassurance from a sleep doctor helps a lot. I see a psychiatrist tomorrow. I'm taking 40 milligrams of Prozac and the legal dose for restful. Thanks for all you do. Thank you, Tim. Thanks for reaching out. And very good questions. I want to say, like, by the nature of the questions, you can tell that you, Tim, a person asking these type of questions has a lot of insight, which is really good. That's really the foundation for getting better. And I think it's, if you haven't listened to the earlier part of this podcast, we did have somebody named Pooja who described very similarly a real, it sounds like Pooja though had gone really down the rabbit hole, tried like so many medications, was super worried about SFI, and then a couple of months later, kind of like, no, that wasn't it. Not worried anymore. And Gabriel, I talked, we had that was last week when I was when I co-hosted a show, or Nick Wignall co-hosted a show. Same thing. Gabriel had been very worried about SFI, no longer was. So maybe that could be a little bit of reassurance for you. But the good questions here are: I went for the walk for my father, and I felt fine. The many people ask me, like, how do I know if I'm getting enough sleep, and how much sleep should I get? And my default answer is always like, how do you feel during the day? If you have no trouble staying awake during the day, if you don't doze off or tend to fall asleep during the day, then you're getting either sufficient amount of sleep or nearly sufficient amount of sleep. If somebody is like really sleep deprived, really not getting enough sleep, then very quickly, I'm talking about like 2 days or something like that, that person would be like, okay, I just cannot stay awake. I can't function. I have to sleep. So I think that is a very important point from you. Is it possible that all this could be caused by anxiety about this disease? Kind of a classic question. We had somebody else just the other day who said, could it be that my anxiety about SFI is kind of producing the symptoms of SFI? And I want to say that hyperarousal, which is when your brain is in this kind of like hyper alert state, kind of like threat monitoring, problem solving state, which insomnia really always is driven by, can cause all kinds of things. It can cause like that paradoxical insomnia where you feel like you don't sleep at all, or sleep misperceptions. It's also it can produce like problems with memory, problem with recall, chills. It can cause like shaking, twitching, having jerks, sudden awareness of falling asleep. All these things can be caused by hyperarousal. Anxiety is a type of hyperarousal. So is it possible that all this could be causing anxiety? That's absolutely possible. Totally. Is it possible that I'm sleeping and not perceiving it? Seems very likely. That sounds very, very likely. And so I think, yeah, I think that was it. And I think, as always, when it comes to insomnia, like the best things to do, I believe, are set it and forget it, spend less time in bed, and then shift your attention elsewhere. And stay in touch, Tim. Hope it becomes a good visit for you tomorrow, and let us know how things go. And with that said, we have the other Tim asking a question. And here's a live comment from Vitamin C. So it says, thank you for supporting me during my dark fatigue days. God bless you. God bless you. I remember a lot of good questions from Vitamin C and a lot of support from Vitamin C. So thank you so much. Thank you. Cool. So let's see. So this is Tim L now, who is having who is writing to us with 2 questions. Hello, Danielle. My name is Tim. I came across your YouTube channel a couple of months ago, and it has been very fun to learn about sleep from a sleep doctor. I get excited every night for your podcast. It's like watching a TV show that I look forward to every night. That made me so happy when I read it the first time, Tim. Super happy. I wanted to tell all my friends about your podcast because I feel there are a lot of false truths about sleep out there. Absolutely. People get too worried as like, I need 8 hours to function. Xanax is the answer. Totally. Especially breaks my heart when I hear people talk about how they feel like there's no hope for them because no doctor has treated their specific sleep problem before. So they lose faith in trusting that physicians still have the right answer. Totally. I think it would help a lot if people knew that, like you say, you're unique, your insomnia isn't. Totally. So, and just a quick comment to that is like, I think the problem is really like medical education, that doctors out there are like, we have to empathize with them because they have no clue what to do when people say I'm sleeping. They have no education at all. So I think that medical education has to change. Questions. Now, number 1. Okay, so I have 2 questions about sleep. Is it true the only thing that can ultimately prevent you from falling asleep is yourself? Meaning like anxiety, stress, worrying about sleep. I thought about this actually earlier when I was driving home, and I think we can kind of go back to that first where we started this episode, which was talking about the 2-arrow analogy. And I want to say that in the short run, meaning like tonight, there can be a million things that can prevent you from falling asleep, meaning it could be an external or kind of internal factor. Like it could be the coffee. It could, in the short run, it could be coffee that's in your body and making you like that chemical thing in your body that prevents you from sleep, not stress. That could happen short term. It could be pain. Let's say you have so much pain that prevents you from falling asleep a night, 2 nights, etc. But when it comes to like the ongoing, night after night, week after week, month after month, trouble falling asleep, the only thing that can cause that is, what we call insomnia, like the stress, anxiety, worrying, preoccupation, thinking about sleep, the reaction to sleeplessness, the preoccupation to sleep. So I want to say that in kind of the long term, yes, that is right. It's only quote unquote yourself, your reaction to sleeplessness, your worry about sleep, that can cause that kind of like prevent you from falling asleep every night in the long term. Yeah, that's totally my belief. Hope that answered the question, Tim. Number 2, how effective are sleep studies / EEGs at understanding and, more importantly, helping you fix the problems for getting to sleep? In my opinion, I would think that if you were to see someone explain your problem and symptoms, then that would be just as good, if not better. But then I'm not an expert on stuff. You are becoming an expert because that is, you're absolutely right on this one. An EEG, where you look at brain wave data, is not helpful at all when it comes to somebody with trouble sleeping. Okay, one little exception, which is the kind of paradoxical insomnia. Maybe if you have a person that says, I don't sleep at all, and you do a sleep study and they slept like 6 hours and they say like, I don't sleep at all that night, then maybe an EEG is a little bit helpful because you have kind of like black and white that the person slept. But that's once in a blue moon. Most of the time, EEGs are not at all helpful, and at kind of from a diagnostic standpoint, it's easy to diagnose insomnia because it's completely subjective. If somebody says, I have trouble sleeping. I struggle with sleep. I can't sleep. So that's insomnia. You don't need any type of testing for that. And by the way, a kind of comment here, Michael Schwartz, who is a good friend and colleague, and we're both starting this thing called the Sleep Coach School. So we're doing a little podcast for that too. And in one of his podcasts, or maybe in one of his episodes, I like classes, he mentioned that if you show like EEG from a person with insomnia and a person without insomnia, you cannot distinguish this kind of type of sleep. Like they look exactly the same, like the sleep that an insomniac has and a non-insomniac. So yeah, EEGs not helpful at all in my opinion when it comes to understanding why somebody has insomnia, and also not helpful at all when it comes to like fixing it. It's not like, you can get a lot of information from a sleep study, like how much deep sleep you had, how much REM sleep, how much 2 sleep, how much wakefulness, how much blah, 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 blah. But none of that gives you any direction. It's not like you can modify that. It's not like you can prescribe this thing to increase your sleep, increase your slow wave sleep or this or that. So, so no, not important at all. And you're right. When you can see somebody to explain your problems, somebody you can talk to, a human being that has knowledge, that's really all you need. And then I just want to share the last thing. Anyways, can't wait for your podcast. Hope my question makes the list. Of course it will. Every question makes the list. And I love this question, Tim. So thanks for all the support. It really means a lot. And stay in touch. With that said, we are going to move on to, I think there are 2 other comments that I wanted to talk about. Here's the first one. Let's see here. This is, all right. Okay. This is from Blushbaby, and this is a comment on Insomnia Insight number 52. It seems for some reason we have talked a lot about jerky, like hypnic jerks and like this sudden awareness of falling asleep lately, which is, that's good. This seems to be important topics. So Blushbaby said this, I have this, and this is again about hypnic jerks. They stopped for a while, thank God, but I had one last week. It's the scariest thing ever. When it happens, I'm so scared to go back to sleep. I had a sleep apnea test and it was negative. Is this condition caused by parasites, ? Vitamin and mineral deficiencies, Lyme, magnesium, acid reflux, iron deficiencies, ? And then I said, I directed Blushbaby to a couple of episodes and talked about why they happen, and that they're really, mostly when they're kind of recurrent like that, it's like a sign of hyperarousal. And then Blushbaby said, I really thought it was sleep apnea, but the test was negative. I set my mind to it that it was okay and forgot about them. Sometimes I'm so tired, I have the need to go to sleep, so I close my eyes, and when I'm about to go into sleeping mode, feels like I have no air in the body, blood pressure drops, and boom, I'm up screaming, and the body feels weird, heart pounding, like a heart attack, no joke. I have several EKGs done, and they're fine, but my iron levels were low. I raised them up, and they went away, but they're back. Could this be mineral deficiency? Off to watch the other episodes. I also had 2 experiences when I felt detached from the body and going through a dark tunnel, and I saw a light. I was terrified. I want to say that, as kind of general disclaimer, I'm happy you're talking to your doctors. Whenever anybody's concerned about your health, you have to talk about to your doctor. But that said, what we are reading here, Blushbaby, it's not that uncommon. It's not that uncommon to have these like bizarre, strange, scary sleep transition awakes. A lot of bizarre things happen in that transitioning from wakefulness into sleep. And the reason they do is hyperarousal. It is like, we can get kind of locked in on our sleep for many different reasons. Locked in, I mean, we can become worried about our sleep and start paying attention to it. And then we start going into this mode where we're like, when it's bedtime, we're kind of monitoring ourselves, like, okay, will it happen tonight? I hope it doesn't. Let's see. And then you kind of sleep, and then that hyperarousal, when you're about to fall asleep, you become aware of falling asleep, and then you can have all kinds of things, like a jerk, just a sudden awareness, a loud boom, kind of like a out-of-body experience. All kinds of things can happen. It sounded like you had actually been doing better and then had one more event. And you said that after you were told that you didn't have sleep apnea, you were like, kind of like, okay, forget about it. which that is a big clue to how to kind of get past these type of events, which is not trying to figure out why they happen, because they just like insomnia, they thrive on attention. The more we think about them, the more we try to figure them out, the more we do things to try to prevent them, then that attention we give them make them worse, because they thrive on attention. So I think what we've learned really in this last weeks here on the channel, starting with like talking Insomnia 16 with Alex and that success story from Linda, is that if you can get to a point where you don't try to prevent them, where you understand that they're caused by hyperarousal and you don't fear them, then they go away. And one thing that Martin Reed shared that could be helpful to anyone really tuning in here is that if you can actually spin it to positive, if you can actually see these events as like just a sign that you're about to fall asleep, and you'd be like, oh, I had that thing going on. Oh, that means I'm about to fall asleep. That's a good thing. If you can get even to that stage, even better. So with that said, Blushbaby, I hope those other episodes were helpful, and stay in touch. Let us know how things go. And then finally here, a comment from 18 hours ago from Brent. And this is a comment on Ask Daniel number 14 when myself and Nick were taking some questions. Here it is. What can cause a person to go weeks without interrupted sleep? No, sorry, weeks with interrupted light sleep, then go weeks with having extremely vivid dreams all night, waking up extremely exhausted. I believe chronic insomnia or chronically not getting rest can actually cause mental health problems like anxiety and depression. For instance, 2 or 3 years ago, when I was sleeping much better than I do now, my mental state was so much better. I had so many desires and goals, but now where my sleep has gotten so bad and debilitating, it's literally destroying my emotions and physical well-being. It is ridiculous. It's like if I can just get one restful night of sleep, it completely brings me back to life physically and mentally. Now, when we go back to kind of the first part of this comment, what can cause somebody to have like light interrupted sleep for weeks, then extremely vivid dreams for weeks, etc.? I think hyperarousal. Again, I know I talk so much about hyperarousal, but I believe that's almost always the culprit that causes all kinds of things. Insomnia in general, interrupted light sleep, vivid dreams, and all the hyperarousal is all about like heightened attention, like really paying attention to your own sleep, etc., which prevents you from having good restful sleep. Now, and then the other part of this comment is the chicken and the egg question here. Is it like you're anxious and therefore you get insomnia, or you have insomnia and that makes you anxious, or you're depressed and then you can't sleep, right? Or the other way around? Well, it's a complex question, and my thinking is that it's probably like one root cause, if you will, one root problem that causes both like insomnia and anxiety and depression. That's kind of my belief. But I think there's a more important point here, which is the following: that reading this comment, Brent, you can read out from it that there's a lot of hope or desire for sleep, and there's kind of a underlying feeling here that if I just slept good, then I would have more goals and desires. I would do more things. I would not be as depressed, not as anxious if I could just sleep well, which is like 100,000% understandable, but it also creates this insomnia on a pedestal, no, sleep on a pedestal situation where, there's so much attached to sleep. Like if I could just sleep, everything would be so much better. And that makes it almost impossible to get good sleep. There's so much pressure to sleep that it almost makes it impossible. And the other thing here is that we don't have control over sleep. There's nothing we can do to make ourselves fall asleep or make ourselves stay asleep. The best things are, in my opinion, always to spend less time in bed doing kind of the CBT things. But the point here is that we do have more control over our day. And even though someone is exhausted and tired, you have more control during the day. Like you can make yourself get up. You can make yourself take a walk. You can make yourself call somebody. You can make yourself like do things during the day that are, pardon me, meaningful, that are fun, that are engaging, stimulating. And it could be like a small goal every day, but then that, you know, you do a little thing, you feel like, okay, I did that, I can do a little bit more, do more things. The more you make your day a really good one, the more you focus on having a good day, the more likely that you'll then have a good sleep. And mostly, I believe that is because if you have fun, if you do things during the day that are engaging and kind of takes your mind off of sleep, then it allows sleep to happen. So yeah, so Brent, thanks so much for this comment, and everyone out there who's commented. Vitamin C, thanks for this live comment. I want to say thank you to everyone, and if you have a question, then please do not hesitate to leave a comment here or send me an email, daniel@insomniainsight.co, and I will have a guest again on Thursday. That's Ellen. Ellen has been a guest on the podcast in Talking Insomnia. I want to say, I don't even remember, but and pretty early Talking Insomnia. She is super insightful, and she has that, you know, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot, and also, you know, which I feel I struggle with sometimes, just like expresses herself so well, so clearly, and so down to earth, you know, way of talking. So that's going to be really good. So look forward to that, and I'm going to end here, and I hope you have a really good rest of your day, morning, night, or whatever time zone you're in. You know, hope you're doing really well, and I'll be back soon. Bye bye.